a lot about the land and the water. But there's something else that happens on day 3 that is very crucial. And that is the creation of vegetation. That God not only said, let there be land, but he says on the land, let there be shrubberies and trees, and let them bear fruit and reproduce themselves. And so I want to take a few minutes here and let's talk about the vegetation. Now, Mike, I want you to start off. What is the importance of vegetation at this moment that it was made?
Again, it's the creation of life. This is where God's putting into stance that life is going to be created. Because he is making the oxygenating the Earth's atmosphere. Going back to last week, talking about the firmament that went around the Earth, it blocked the sun rays from coming in to make harmful rays. And so from that, it created almost a shield on the inside as well. There are oxygen containers today that you can get for a mere $250,000 that you can put into your house, and you can sleep in these oxygen tanks. Michael Jackson has one that he sleeps in every night because he wants to stay younger. The more oxygen you have, the better it helps you out. It takes wrinkles away. This pressurized oxygen is a great tool to have. I believe that the Earth's atmosphere was that way. That it was this pressurized oxygen, and with oxygen and not being able to escape out of the firmament, it made the Earth even better and cleaner place. I believe that's why people live to be 1,000 years old, because they had this oxygen that kept them going, kept reviving them. They have little, in malls, they have oxygen bars where you can go pay a quarter and you can sip some oxygen for a little bit. And this oxygen actually, it replenishes you, it revitalizes you because it's straight oxygen. And then the vegetation, again, the vegetation creates the oxygen, takes the carbon dioxide away, creates oxygen for you. So if all this oxygen is being created, it's not escaping, it's creating this type of environment and atmosphere to where things live longer, grass grows faster. There was a scientist that grew a tomato plant that said, if I put this under pressurized oxygen, how fast will it grow? It ended up growing to be almost a tree. It was the size of a tree and created over 1,500 tomatoes. The tomatoes were supposed to be little bitty cherry tomatoes, and they were the size of a normal tomato. So over 1,500 tomatoes coming from this tomato tree from this scientist that put it underneath pressurized oxygen tank. So if the Earth was in the same type of atmosphere, the pressure there, the grass would be taller, lizards, dinosaurs would be larger, people would be larger. Going back to, you don't see a 9-foot man like you did Goliath. And there was, in Genesis, it talks about other giants. All through the Old Testament, it talks about giant people. And from that, I believe that's also a runoff of the oxygenated environment.
So, again, we come back to perfection. God created perfection. Now, sin attacks perfection. What sin did, when Adam and Eve sinned in the garden, they were cast out of the garden, the world was no longer perfect. No longer, even though we had the protection, we had the things, now man had to toil by the sweat of his brow to produce crops from the ground. And all of a sudden we began to realize that vegetation is a natural thing, but it's something that needs to be cultivated. It needs to be taken care of. And I immediately get a picture. Mike sent me a text message earlier this week. I get the picture of the parable of the sower. As Jesus talked about that the sower would come and scatter seed, and some seed fell on good ground, and some seed fell on bad ground and stony ground and hard ground, and some took root and grew quickly, but the roots were shallow and it died quickly. But the seed that fell on fertile ground, the roots went deep, and the plants grew tall. There was maturity in those plants. And I believe as we begin to think and we look at this creation concept, and we look at what God did with vegetation and how God created this, he said, look, I made perfection. Sin destroyed perfection, but within my creation, I'm still going to make a way for there to be fertile places, for there to be places within you, if we will allow ourselves to be tilled up. One of the things we got to remember personally and spiritually is that because of sin, we're no longer perfect to accept the word of Christ. Before the fall of man, Adam and Eve walked with God in the cool of the evening every day. What an awesome experience. So walk with God every day. You talk to Him. You have a personal relationship with Him. Our mission here at His church is to build relationships with God and men. What I envision as the perfect church, as a pastor, is a group of people who, first of all, have a relationship with God. Adam and Eve had a relationship with God. It was not a religious relationship. It was a personal relationship. It was not based on anything other than, this is my friend that I talk to every day. Me and my wife have a relationship. That relationship is based off our friendship. We were friends long before we decided to date or thought about getting married. To the point that I used to date other girls, and I'd go out on dates and come back and call my wife and tell her about the date. Why? Because she was my best friend. And it took me realizing that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with my best friend before I realized what that relationship meant. But that relationship is there not because I know the right words to say. It's not because I say yes, dear, a lot. It's not because that I always tell her she's right. And I said that in public, and it's recorded, so it has to be fact. No, it's not because of any other reason, but that we have a personal relationship. She's seen my bad days. She's seen my good days. When I don't feel like doing anything, I can tell her I don't feel like doing anything. And when I want to go do something, I can say, hey, let's go do something. When I'm excited, I can be excited around her. When I am depressed, I can be depressed around her. Why? Because we have a relationship. And I know that she is not going to abandon me because I have a bad day. And neither is she going to put me down because I have a good day. She is going to be there with me because I have a relationship. That's the kind of relationship I think we can have with God. I think our relationship with God does not have to be based on, do we say the right word? I believe we can talk to God like I talk to a friend. I was a youth pastor for 8 years. And I used to tell my teenagers all the time, if you can't get the concept of prayer, then pick up a phone, hold it to your ear, and talk to God. You can't see the person on the other end of that phone, and you can't see the physical being of God. But you can talk to them on that phone, and you can talk to God. I believe it's important that we have that kind of relationship with God. The other part of our vision is that we have a relationship with God and man. And I believe that it's important that we develop relationships with each other. What God is doing, and we begin to see the first remnants of this on day 3 here. God is laying out a system where there is a relationship mentality. Look, I am going to create dry land and vegetation. And the vegetation is going to breathe in the carbon dioxide. If I remember my science class, I won't sound scientific now. The plants breathe in carbon dioxide. Yeah, see, I sound real scientific. Dioxide. It breathes that in, which is a deadly poison to us. And it breathes out, if you will, oxygen. And it produces oxygen, which is the key to our life. As Pastor Mike's already shared, the more oxygen, the more life. As young as I look, I must have one of those oxygen tanks somewhere. But, it is one of those things that He is already creating this relationship concept. I'm going to create the vegetation first. Why? The vegetation is not more important than man. But the vegetation is going to create a relationship with man that is going to be necessary for man to survive. The vegetation is going to create a relationship with animals. It's going to be necessary for the animals to survive. The vegetation creates this relationship with us. We eat from it. We breathe from it. We draw pleasure from it. Quick story. I'm a storyteller, so forgive me.